Telling your story is very important in many ways, such as hiring and selling. You know, one of the hardest parts of being a founder, though, is getting your story right when talking to investors. It's a very specialized way of telling a story to attract a very certain type of interest. And any of you who've been a founder, any of you who've had to pitch angel investors or VCs, it's a challenge, and it's definitely a skill set. I like to say that it's trying to get pitch perfect. And I know that's a corny pun, but I'm an ex-music major. What do you want? This session is hosted by Shannon Shallcross. Shannon is the founder and CEO of, co-founder and CEO of Beta X Analytics, a healthcare data science company that was named the most innovative by Providence Business News for their work in helping employers control spending. Shannon also serves as the HIPAA compliance appointee for the Rhode Island Department of Health HIE Advisory Commission. Additionally, she is the board vice president for the Charter Care Foundation, an organization that grants funding for initiatives focused on improving the health of Rhode Islanders. Shannon is a TEDx speaker and a 3-time judge for the Cox Business Get Started Rhode Island pitch competition. So she definitely knows a thing or two about seeing a few pitches. Let's hear from the judge. Over to you, Shannon.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thumbs up if you guys can hear me. Thank you. So before I start, I just have to say, Pat, for anyone who is part of this who does not know Pat, he's an awesome guy. I was introduced to him probably about 4 years ago, and I remember to this day that Pat was just like so willing to take his time to, get to know me and like so many other entrepreneurs. I even remember, Pat, during our very first meeting, you're like, you know what, like if you guys don't have office space, you can just plan up in my space. And, I kind of realized that they always say, you can't trust when people want to like give something out to you for free. But I would say the exception is the entrepreneur community, particularly in Rhode Island, because, in the early part of our startup journey, it was just like a magical time. Everyone who we met, people like Pat, just like so giving of their time and expertise. And at that time, Pat had extensive experience with fundraising. And, at that phase with his company, Datarista, he was just so giving in sharing of his experience. And then he shared of both his time and his space when he had founded Rhode Island Coalition of Entrepreneurs, which we were part of as well. And then one other fun fact that I should mention is in 2015, Mass Challenge did a boot camp in Rhode Island. It was really their first like dipping of their toe in the water in Rhode Island. And in that first boot camp cohort, my company, Beta X Analytics, went through that. But so did Annette's. That's where I met Patrice Milos from Medley Genomics. Neil Fine, who I saw is in the meeting today, he was part of that cohort too. So we have a really great community here of entrepreneurs and great people to learn from. So I'm really happy to be sharing some of my experience with respect to pitching, some of my history, the good, the bad, the ugly. I've been involved in all manner of different types of pitches. Some go well, some don't. But the bottom line is every single pitch that you do really is a learning experience, whether it is to investors or whether it's a sales pitch. So I'm going to try here to share my slides. Let's see if this works. Okay, can everyone see this? Great. So 4 years ago, I sat with a health tech CEO and I was pitching my company to her. But little did I know I would leave that meeting profoundly impacted by her story that she shared with me. So I remember it to this day. At the time, she was a nurse. That's how she started her career. And she told me that she made a catastrophic medical error. Her patient was a 7-year-old child. She was on duty overnight at a small community hospital, and she got a call from the surgeon who was there that night. And the surgeon asked her, "What did you give this girl that you just prepped for surgery?" She wasn't breathing. And in the surgeon's exasperated words, they were losing her. So she was just wondering desperately what in the world could have gone wrong. And she went over to the medication area and she realized the unthinkable, that she had administered 10 times the child's prescribed amount of scopolamine, which is an overdose that could lead to coma and even death. Fortunately, for all that night, this little girl narrowly escaped death, and they were able to revive her, and she was able to recover. But as the nurse retraced her steps back to figure out what in the world went wrong, how in the world did something like this happen, she realized what actually happened was that this girl's dose had been transposed 6 times by hand before getting to her. And by the time that this dose reached her, the decimal point had been mistransposed in the process. So this child narrowly escaped death because of a decimal point. There was no reason for someone's life to hang in the balance of handwritten notes. Healthcare was desperately behind in technology. So fast forward 2 decades, this nurse became CEO of a health technology company, and she led a transformation to open up electronic access to patient data between hospitals and doctors' offices across her state to transform the coordination of patient care. So the nurse from this story is Laura Adams, and she's the co-founder and former CEO of the Rhode Island Quality Institute. Over her years leading this company, she succeeded in securing tens of millions of dollars in funding to advance this mission of improving technology within healthcare. And her organization was actually the only one in the nation to win all 3 major health information technology grants from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, totaling $27 million. So I'm sharing this with you today because it was here that I learned the immense power of your startup story. The story that you tell can get you the funding that you need. It can bring revenue from your clients. It brings you talent to your team. It brings you muscle to your advisory board. So when you're pitching, you have to lay out how you're going to successfully scale your business. But your story is the mission that helps to fuel you forward. It's the key to the most important question that your pitch needs to answer for your audience. And that question is quite simply, why should I care about your company? So in the next few minutes, I'm going to share some answers to a few basic questions on how to put together a memorable pitch. We'll start by reviewing the difference between an investor pitch and a sales pitch. Then we'll move on to cover the thing that you need to do before you even start putting your story together. We're going to cover what makes a pitch great, what makes great slides, and finally, how to ace your live pitch. All right, so I do want to say what we're going to cover today is primarily focused on putting together your live investor pitch. But before we move on, let's take a moment just to talk about the different kinds of pitches that startups prepare. So the biggest difference between pitching to investors versus pitching to potential customers is their knowledge of the problem that you're solving. Your potential customers already know very well what their problem is, and potential investors may not know anything about your particular problem that you're solving. And they might not even know about your market. So you will need to take some time to clearly set this landscape for them so they can understand the market need for your solution. So for a fundraising pitch, at the most basic level, your pitch should demonstrate how you're building a scalable business in a huge opportunity space. I call this completing the equation. It's not about evaluating the merits of an idea, because there are plenty of great ideas out there, but your investors really just want to evaluate if your idea is going to make them money. So, quite simply, it's size of market opportunity plus right timing plus right cost of acquisition plus right team equals lots of money for them. For investors, you really just want to complete the equation. So when putting your pitch together, where should you start? The first step to building your pitch is actually making sure that you have a good company. And this part involves extensive research of your market, your competition, and your customers. Sarah Goa is a partner at the VC firm Greylock, and she said, an important key to being good at pitching is to make your story as clear and easy to understand as possible. Of course, the most important key is to actually have a good company. Do you deeply understand the problem that you're solving? Who are you and why do you care? Can you explain your unique and compelling value proposition? Do you understand the landscape of what's out there? So before putting your pitch together, it's important to answer these questions for yourself. You want to prove first to yourself that you have a scalable business with proven financials. And once you do this, you're well positioned to form a very compelling story. If you can prove to yourself in numbers that there's a market need for what you're building, you're on the right track. 42% of startups failed because customers didn't want what they were building. And this gets to why investors want to understand the problem that you're solving. And they're going to want to see early traction in the form of either customers or other investors. They'll want to understand the total addressable market to know how big the problem is that you're solving. So for you, having a deep understanding of the size of your problem that you're solving and early validation that your assessment is correct is the foundational type of research and business planning that needs to happen before you even put one slide together. So before trying to convince investors that your business idea is scalable and profitable, it's important to just convince yourself. Building out the numbers to complete the equation of your business it seems like a very simple thing, but I will say it's baffling how few businesses actually do this. How few businesses actually go through the business planning process, and they take that process seriously. So many companies that I see start to put the financials once they're actually having to go pitch, and you don't want the tail to wag the dog like that. It's really important to show yourself the numbers before pitching to investors so you can work out any kinks or problems before you're pitching. You want to poke holes in your own assumptions on your own time, because if you don't, someone else will, and you won't be prepared to answer the questions. So in addition to building out a 3 to 5 year plan of basic financials for yourself, you'll need to understand some of the foundational metrics that VCs typically use to evaluate the merits of a startup. Now, I will say I am happy to share with you a list of recommended resources after this presentation, and included there are some great summaries of some of the most meaningful metrics that VCs will want to see, but also that you're going to want to just be using to just track the success of your business. To give a sense of where an investor's head is when they're listening to your pitch, they want to see you prove in numbers exactly how and why your business will scale. And to take that a step further, many VCs say that they are quite literally looking for companies that will be a monopoly. Wharton professor Adam Grant did an interview in 2014 with renowned VC Peter Thiel. And during this discussion, Peter said, from the point of view of a founder or entrepreneur, you want your company to always be a monopoly. You want to be offering something to the world that no one else is offering, and therefore you have some really healthy profit margins around your business. He went on to say, from the inside, I would argue that a monopoly is always a good thing. That's what every entrepreneur should attempt to build. So before even starting to put your pitch together, you got to do your homework. I'd say spend a lot of time doing research and proving to yourself in concrete metrics that you have a scalable and defensible business. Do that, and you're on the right track. But the next question is, what makes a pitch great? The best pitches create urgency by communicating your deep and compelling why. If you think your pitch is about covering mission, problem, solution, financials, team, you're halfway there. But if this was all that mattered, everyone would really get funding. The main points you want to get across in your pitch is, why should I care? Why should I believe? Why should I join? It's communicating this deeper why that creates urgency, emotional connection, and makes your pitch truly memorable. If you want to see an example of a well-known great pitch, take a look at Elon Musk's launch for the Tesla Powerwall. So here, Musk goes far beyond simple bullet points of just problem and solution. Elon Musk lays out a narrative that instead of describing the problem he's solving, he does what Andy Raskin describes as name the enemy. So here he focuses on the dire effects of our traditional power sources on the planet. And before revealing his solution, which is a battery that stores solar energy for nighttime consumption, he shows the promised land, which is a world powered entirely by the sun. Describing the problem and solution in this way helps his audience understand why it's important. Without this approach, his Powerwall is just a battery, but the way that he describes it, it's like the savior of mankind. Now, I know what you're thinking. Shannon, I'm no Elon Musk. I'm not a billionaire. My company's not solving climate change or saving anyone's life. How do I make people care about my company? Well, let's take Airbnb for an example. They're a company who had a fairly straightforward pitch deck story. They're not saving anyone's life. The story is not heart-wrenching. However, they have been successful in raising a total of $6.4 billion since 2008, a true unicorn. There are many ways to convey the why should I care question in your pitch. And inside every great startup is a great story. I'll also say that for anyone who attended last night, Nico from Willie Super Brew had an opportunity to share a little bit about his company, and he shared some of his story. And it was really amazing. His story about how he had met this guy, Willie. Willie was making these really unique drinks that were actually made from real ingredients, and they actually tasted good. He just had this awesome story that now I'm going to remember forever. And now I totally want to go out and buy his product. So again, I will say inside every great startup truly is a great story. And he has a really great one to tell as well. All right, so let's move on to the next. What makes the best slides? So after you as a founder do your homework to prove out your business and numbers, you have your urgent why, it's time to think about slides. So what makes the best slides? My spoiler alert is it's probably not what you think. So forget slick and fancy. Pitch slides are best when they are simple and straight to the point. Beware of the trap of thinking that your pitch is about the deck. In your live investor pitch, your words are the most important part of your pitch, and the slides really only serve as a way to make sure your audience has a clear takeaway of your main points. There are plenty of resources online that will be very informative for you on how to tell your story. But not surprisingly, some of the most informative sources are slide design companies like Slidebean or Canva, and they'll show you in detail how to cover the main elements of your pitch from problem, solution to financials and team, but it's very easy to lose sight of the forest through the trees. Slides are not the first thing that you want to do while you're architecting your pitch. They really are the last. On this slide, though, here's a nice comparison from several successful VCs and entrepreneurs on which slides you should include in your live pitch. And the points in blue on this diagram show the 6 core slides that all of them agree that you include. And the 6 core slides are problem, solution, business model, competition, founding team, and fundraising. And most recommend that your live pitch deck contain no more than 10 to 12 slides. I'm just going to pause for one moment here just to see, because I'm not monitoring the chat, if we have any questions, or perhaps we can wait till the end as well. But Pat, are there any questions that are coming in?
I'm not seeing any in the chat, but you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay,
Actually,
great.
I'll ask one quick question. This is Annette. Hey, is it possible for us to actually share these slides with folks at a later date?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Annette,
awesome.
I'll send this deck to you afterwards, because you'll also see at the very end, I have a list of recommended resources. I am not a VC, but here I am talking about pitching to potential investors. So I actually did take a lot of time before putting this together to blend what I know with also like what's generally accepted according to VCs. And I came across some really amazing resources that I think that some of the founders that are part of RIHub or on in this meeting today could really benefit from. So yes, I will share the slides.
I'll share one other comment. A well-known venture capitalist who's going to be with us a little bit later actually just gave you huge kudos for this and said this is a fantastic presentation. So somebody who actually does investing likes what you're saying. Keep going.
Great. That's fantastic. Thanks for the feedback. And please feel free, if you have questions or comments, put them in the chat because we can answer them while I'm going or even at the end as well. So moving on, if you can tell your story in a clear and understandable manner, you're already better than the majority of pitches that are out there. That's why Kevin Hale from Y Combinator recommends that founders stick with ultimate simplicity when it comes to slides. So slides must be readable with large, bold text and simple fonts. Each should communicate one idea with very little text. And your message should be obvious and get straight to the point. You want to connect the dots as in your message as simply as possible. An overarching theme with the investor pitch slides is simplicity. Hick's law states that each piece of information you add comes at a cost. So additional information and data points really just cloud judgment, and it makes making a decision more difficult. You want it to be easy for investors to see why your business is worth funding. So simple really is best. So remember the goal. Slides should be legible, simple, and obvious. The biggest mistake that I see people making is putting too much text on slides. And the problem with too much text is the moment that people see this, they're no longer listening to you. Adding too much text is the beginning of losing your audience. In a live pitch, you, the founder, are the mouthpiece, not the slides. So using slick presentation tools and effects may make you feel like the rock star of your startup dreams, but in most of the cases, these little touches lead to issues leading up to and during the live pitch for the most ridiculous reasons. So I'll give you an example that happens a lot. It's possible that the on-site network security for your pitch doesn't allow for your laptop to connect to the network. And perhaps you made your slides using Keynote and no one else has a Mac. Or let's say that you did your slides on a web-based service like SlideBean or Prezi, and when you get on site, you find that you can't connect to the internet. Trust me, It feels terrible going into a big pitch where the 30 minutes leading up to it is this harried rush trying to get technologies to sync. It's for this reason that I almost always do presentations as a PDF, or I will paste single photos of my slides into PowerPoint. I say, save all that extra time spent putting together the ultimate sickest presentation and put that time and effort into perfecting your in-person delivery. And this leads us to our final question. How do I ace my live pitch?
Alexa, turn it on.
So acing your live pitch is simple if you follow the process we've just discussed. You do your homework, make sure the numbers work out, and demonstrate this in your pitch. You want to make your message clear, simple, and to the point. And finally, practice 6 ways from Sunday. Now, you might be great in front of people, and perhaps you're even a fantastic impromptu speaker. But in an investor pitch, the messaging needs to be so tight that it can be mastered only with a lot of practice. So what does this mean to practice 6 ways from Sunday? Let's put it this way. As a founder, you're an athlete, and your sport is telling your company's story. The better you get at doing this, the more money you're going to bring in from investors and clients. You'll attract the best team members and the best advisors. So it's worth seriously devoting some time to perfect your story. I recommend that people practice their pitch in public with their team in front of a variety of different audiences. So not only does this help them to make the core points of their pitch second nature, but it also ensures that they get used to tailoring their language for their audience on the fly. So I would recommend boil your pitch down to 1 minute with the goal of simplifying your core message. This will help you have an elevator pitch on the ready. Pitch in front of an expert to have someone poke holes in your logic before there's money at stake. I would also recommend to pitch to a grandmother or even a child so you can get used to thinking about the importance of tailoring your message to your audience. You don't want to have the exact same words for every single person that you present to. And lastly, don't feel like you need to be someone who you're not. There's no need to come off like Don Draper during your pitch. It's okay to be yourself. You really should be yourself. The point of all of this practice is truly so you can just feel comfortable in your own skin. So like I said, in the course of pulling this talk together, I pulled some resources from some of the best founders and VCs out there. So I will be sharing these slides with Annette so she can make sure that you get these. And I'm happy to share this recommended reading list so to help you build out your investor pitch and also your sales pitch. So that is the end of my story. I know that we have about 3 minutes here. Are there any questions coming in via chat?
Shannon, there's nothing coming in yet. Let's give them a couple minutes. I want to touch on a couple of things you've said. First of all, for those of you who don't know Shannon, you do know Shannon now. She's clearly one of the bright entrepreneurial minds in our state. A couple of things. You talked about problems, tech problems at pitches. And one of the things I have always told people is be prepared to give a pitch without a deck. You know your company, you know your story. You can be confident in telling your story without a deck. Practice it. To your point about telling grandma, I've been in angel groups and I've tried to talk SaaS with an angel group, and the guys who are the angels are lawyers and doctors, and maybe they had a manufacturing plant. People make money all kinds of ways. They don't always speak your language. So your point about telling grandma is so well taken. And lastly, I'd like to add one thing to all of Shannon's advice, and this is a personal piece of advice I would give. I remember I was pitching an angel group, and I got some advice from somebody that most of the people in this angel group were older, and some of them, in their 70s and 80s, they might not want to wait 10 years for an exit, 12 years for an exit. They may be looking for some quicker ways to get money and enjoy their golden years. So I told the story of how my company could hit a quick exit for a good multiple in a short amount of time. And the feedback from that audience was, well, I don't think you're playing the hand out, Pat. I think you're looking to make a quick buck. So I went into the next session and I went and said, this can grow to be $1 billion company if you wait a long time. And they said, you're overlooking short-term opportunity. At the end of the day, you listen to all the advice from all the people who want to tell you what to do with your business, but you have to be true to your story and what you believe. And listen, there are a lot of smart people who can give you advice on your business, but when you make your pitch, it's got to ring true to what you believe. People will sniff out, all the other stuff.